Right, but I went from like
Yeah.
that's how I got to.
Well, the thing is, you know,
We're ready.
except for Lake Michigan,
Okay,
all the
let's
Great
go.
Lakes, because Canada are subject to an international tax. You can't really take it without consent of Canada.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right, I don't know. Can y'all hear me? No. How's
Nope, it's off.
this? I hate when that happens.
Yeah, so do we.
Push up, it says off. There we go. Oh, that's so much better. Let's try this now. So I don't have to hold it. How's this?
Better.
Better? Enough? Not good enough. We're going to see. Well, how about we'll try this. I won't be so text bound today. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Ron.
Good morning, folks,
Morning.
Good morning.
and welcome to this place of joy and life. I'm Ron Solberg, and I'm pleased to be with you today as your worship associate. If you're visiting today, we are glad that you're here, and to those watching you on the tube, welcome. And also visitors, we have a book for you to sign in so that you get in our mailing list, get our news and notes. That's edited by Nancy Krantz over there. Thank you, Nancy. Our music today is provided by Dennis Saget and our tech savvy people, Alex and Jean, and our hospitality team led by Paula. Where are you, Paula?
She's being hospitable.
She's working. Okay. There's always a lot going on around this church, and you can read all about it in news and notes that come out on Friday. And there are printed copies available downstairs. If you'd like to receive news and notes, you can sign up again by signing up in that visitor's book nearby over there. And also, in terms of so much going on, I invite you to take a look at the clothing and things that Jay Van Keur has provided. He indicates today that he's brought in some new clothing items, cocktail dresses. It's all located in the lower level of the RE building, room 2. And
Sundresses.
pardon?
Sundresses.
Sundresses.
Perfect for today.
Perfect. Yeah.
Hurry.
Not for men though, just for women. Is that
I mean,
okay?
I don't know.
Anyway, thank you, Jay, for contributing those items. But you can shop afterwards, and again, it's in the lower level of the RE building.
Thank you so much, Ron. I add my greeting once again to all of you on this sultry Midwest morning in August. I was warned it's going to be really hot in August. For those of you who don't know, I relocated here from San Diego. Even though I grew up here, I moved out 35 years ago. Grew up on the northwest side of Chicago. And so, yes, this is the August weather that I've been warned about and am being warmed by. Oh, sorry, that was a bad joke. We begin by acknowledging that we in the western suburbs inhabit areas that are the traditional territories of indigenous peoples, including the Kickapoo, Peoria, Kaskaskia, Potawatomi, and so many others as you really delve into the history. As people trying to live into a more just world, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the history and legacy of colonialism, the harm done to Native peoples, and to also work to repair that harm. Our service this morning are my reflections on the Parliament of the World's Religions that I attended all last week at McCormick Place. And so you'll be hearing about my experience, and you'll be hearing about the calls to action that we were invited into, all 7,000 participants. Some of you may know that at the first Parliament of the World's Religions in 1893, Swami Vivekananda was a speaker there and around Chicagoland, and he spoke at our church. It was the first time people had seen folks from quote, exotic countries from the East. And Swami Vivekananda was a learned, important Hindu teacher, Hindu Swami. And so he spoke at our church, and we feel a connection to him. And his presence was felt throughout this Parliament. You're going to hear more about that. So I opened today with words by Swami Vivekananda. It was his response to the welcome at the 1893 Parliament of the World's Religions. He said, "The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the most wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita." He means the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred Hindu text. "Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me." He goes on, "Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticisms, all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. It is not lost on me, beloveds, that he said these words in 1893. And yet we are still beset, are we not? And yet, the Parliament of the World's Religions was an invitation, and still is an invitation for all of us, people of all religions, no religions, for all of us to see, hold in our hearts, feel, and know clearly that we are indeed one. And it was an invitation for all to enter, to rejoice, to come in, to open our ears to new songs, to open our hearts, to open ourselves to change. And so it is, beloveds. I invite you today, as you're able, to rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our opening song, and to rejoice and come in, led by Carol Peterson. Ready? Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song.
enter, rejoice, and come in.
Invite Ron up to do the chalice lighting.
In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. As we consider the importance of this place, our congregation and its mission this morning, we invite the spirit of generosity and support of this, our church home. In reading together, this church is made of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with people around us, and with all the world. We now gratefully receive your contributions, and thank you in advance for your generosity.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you, Nancy, for receiving the offering in our humble manner. And so, I invite you to take a breath with me and just settle in. When I invited you to breathe, I noticed some people instinctively put their feet on the earth. You don't need to do that, but if you're inclined, and just invite you to arrive to this moment, to this time in our service, the time where we pause. We've affirmed our community with our generosity and with our gathering, and we pause to acknowledge all that we bring with us as we journey together through our lives. We come, each of us, each week, with our joys and our sorrows, with our loves, with our lostness, with our hopes, with our dreams, with our cares. And we make the space most weeks to hold the space for these joys and for these sorrows. So I invite you to take a breath, connecting to what it is that you brought with you today. And just being for a moment. We've said a lot of words. I invite you to let the breeze speak, and the lawn mowers, and the traffic, and your own breath. The silence, connecting with your body, with your mind, with your spirit. Do your shoulders need to drop? Does your breath need to deepen? Do you need to hear the insects? Your neighbor's breath? The warmth in your body? Reminding us that we are, each of us, and all connected. Each to each. In a wholeness. Amidst our diversity and unity, including the universal desire for peace, to be at ease, to be comforted when we mourn. Take a deep breath, if you will, with me. Just breathe with me. Connecting with, again, what it is that you brought with you today. And if you have something that you would like to share, you can do this a couple of ways. If you would like, you can call out what you brought with you, and I'll drop a pebble in our chalice, signifying that we are bringing each of our uniqueness, but we are held in community. Or if you would like, and you feel comfortable and capable of navigating the grassy area, then I invite you to come in. I'm going to go ahead and begin. As I mentioned earlier, before we actually started the service, I'm holding in my heart the people of Maui who have suffered devastating fires. I'm holding in my heart the people of Mexico and San Diego and all of Southern California, and wherever this tropical storm may hit and may land. So I'm going to drop a couple of stones for that. And if you have something that you would like to share, do you want to come up?
So I'm thankful that my dad is here this weekend. And this Friday, I had to say goodbye to my cat. So I'm a little sad.
Hold Sandy in our hearts and Snickers. Alex, they're saying they can't hear. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, I'm thankful for the bounty of the season. I brought in summer squash to celebrate. It's downstairs. If you want some, please take it.
Thankful for the bounty of the season and the summer squash that is here to be had downstairs in the social hall, the Alice Warren room. Thank you. Yes.
Can you repeat her name again? Snickers? They didn't hear you back.
Snickers. We're holding in our heart Snickers, a beautiful long-haired tabby.
In celebration of our youngest grandchild's first birthday.
Celebration of Mike's youngest grandchild's first birthday. Yes.
For the many notes, cards, and letters I received during my medical sojourn.
Peter is back from a medical sojourn, as he called it. We're so happy that you're back. Keith, oh, pardon me. I'm so sorry, Keith. And thank you, Nancy, for it just wasn't like a Holy Spirit download. Someone had to tell me I got it wrong. Anyone else? Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Holy One, moving in, through, and among us. We pause before this next thing, holding in our hearts all that's been spoken and all that is still held in the quietness of each heart as we move through this day and this week. Know that you are indeed interconnected, held in love with all that is. And know this, you, each of you, are held in love and mystery deeper than you can know. I would like to invite Ron up to share a reading with me. The theme of this Parliament of the World's Religions was a call to conscience, freedom, and human rights. There was also the link of a global ethic that was initially worked on in the Parliament of 1993. So there was a 100-year gap between the first Parliament, which was held in Chicago, in what is now the Art Institute, and then held 100 years later here in Chicago. And they began work on a global ethic. More work was done on this global ethic, and then in 2018, there is an initial draft that we're all encouraged to understand and to learn about. And so we're going to read part of this. The effort was always intended to be a living document. Thousands of individuals and organizations have endorsed the text to offer it to the world as a statement of rules for living on which the world's religions can agree. And we invite additional endorsements from everyone.
Toward a global ethic, an initial declaration. The world is in agony. The agony is so pervasive and urgent that we are compelled to name its manifestations so that the depth of this pain may be made clear. Peace eludes us. This planet is being destroyed. Neighbors live in fear. Women and men are estranged from each other. Children die. This is abhorrent. We condemn the abuses of Earth's ecosystems. We condemn the poverty that stifles life's potential, the hunger that weakens the human body, the economic disparities that threaten so many families with ruin. We condemn the social disarray of the nations, the disregard for justice which pushes citizens to the margin, the anarchy overtaking our communities, and the insane death of children from violence. In particular, we condemn aggression and hatred in the name of religion.
But this agony need not be. It need not be, because the basis for an ethic already exists. This ethic offers possibility of a better individual and global order, and leads individuals away from despair and societies away from chaos. We are women and men, we are people who have embraced the precepts and practices of the world's religions. We affirm that a common set of core values is to be found in the teachings of the religions, and that these form the basis of a global ethic. We affirm that this truth is already known, but yet to be lived in heart and action. We affirm that there is an irrevocable, unconditional norm for all areas of life, for families and communities, for races, nations, and religions. There already exist ancient guidelines for human behavior, which are found in the teachings of the religions of the world, and which are the condition for a sustainable world order.
Therefore, we declare we are interdependent. Each of us depends on the well-being of the whole, and so we have respect for the community of living beings, for people, animals, and plants, and for the preservation of earth, the air, water, and soil. We take individual responsibility for all that we do. All our decisions, actions, and failures to act have consequences.
We must treat others as we wish others to treat us. We make a commitment to respect life and dignity, individuality and diversity, so that every person is treated humanely, without exception. We must have patience and acceptance. We must be able to forgive, learning from the past, but never allowing ourselves to be enslaved by memories of hate. Opening our hearts to one another, we must sink our narrow differences for the cause of our world community, practicing a culture of solidarity and relatedness.
We consider humankind our family. We must strive to be kind and generous. We must not live for ourselves alone, but should also serve others, never forgetting the children, the aged, the poor, the suffering, the disabled, the refugees, and the lonely. No person should ever be considered or treated as second-class citizen or be exploited in any way whatsoever. There should be equal partnership between men and women. We must not commit any kind of sexual immorality. We must put behind us all forms of domination or abuse.
We commit ourselves to a culture of nonviolence, respect, justice, and peace. We shall not oppress, injure, torture, or kill another human being, forsaking violence as a means of settling differences. We must strive for a just social and economic order in which everyone has equal chance to reach full potential as a human being. We must speak and act truthfully and with compassion, dealing fairly with all, avoiding prejudice and hatred. We must not steal. We must move beyond the dominance of greed for power, prestige, money, and consumption to make a just and peaceful world.
Earth cannot be changed for the better unless the consciousness of individuals is changed first. We pledge to increase our awareness by disciplining our minds, by meditation, by prayer, or by positive thinking. Without risk and readiness to sacrifice, there can be no fundamental change in our situation. Therefore, we commit ourselves to this global ethic, to understanding one another, and to socially beneficial, peace-fostering, and nature-friendly ways of life. We invite all people, whether religious or not, to do the same.
So what do you think? I mean, when you consider that people from all of the world's religions put this together, it is a good initial draft. I'll make some comments about improvements that I saw already at this Parliament, but first, I would invite you to join in singing "We Would Be One." You should have a song sheet. If you don't, we have more if you need one.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn. that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Thus ends everything that we need to do. Dennis played the offertory last week, and I mentioned how moving I find it. It's so aspirational still. That song was sung at the merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. But it fits so well today, and for our reflections on the Parliament and the global ethic and what it is that we would see ourselves called to do as communities of faith. The Parliament was founded on a mission to cultivate harmony among the world's religions and spiritual communities, to foster engagement with the world and its guiding institutions to address the critical issues of our time. The Parliament was incorporated in 1988 to carry out a tradition and legacy that, as I mentioned, dates back to 1893, the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where that historic convening took place. It created a global platform for engagement of the religions of the East and West as they were known and thought of then. In 1893, the Parliament had then and now attracts, as I said, people from all over, more than 200 diverse religions, indigenous and secular beliefs, and more than 80 nations at its international gatherings in Chicago, again, 100 years later in 1993, in Cape Town, South Africa in 1999, in Barcelona, Spain in 2004, in Melbourne, Australia in 2009, in Salt Lake City, Utah, USA in 2015, in Toronto, Canada 2018, and it was held virtually in 2021. One of the things that you notice is that the gap between the parliaments has gotten shorter. Of course, obviously less than 100 years, but it was 5 years separated, and now we're really looking at every 2 years or so. We don't know where the next parliament will be. Everyone was waiting at the closing, hoping for that announcement, but we assured it would be forthcoming. The Parliament's convenings are the world's oldest and largest and most inclusive gatherings of the global interfaith movement. Over the years, nearly 60,000 people across the world have convened in an enduring commitment to justice and peace and sustainability. Global leaders such as His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, His Holiness, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, UN Messenger of Peace Jane Goodall, Nobel Peace Laureates Desmond Tutu, Shirin Ebdabi, and President Jimmy Carter have addressed the Parliament convenings throughout their history. This Parliament was the most important and largest gathering of the world's religions and spiritual leaders and practitioners, uniting in a collective, courageous, and clear reply to the most dangerous crisis confronting us today, that of authoritarianism. This existential, expanding, and global scourge is manifesting in tyrants and strongmen who commit crimes against humanity, suppress fundamental freedoms, subvert democracies, and murder the truth with lies. These bullies and despots are pursuing nationalist wars, winking at domestic terrorism. They're fostering hate and a resurgence of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, misogyny, and racism. They are attempting to misappropriate religions to justify the unjustifiable. Every faith has at its core, as we heard in the global ethic, an answer to this, a way for us to live into the possibility of that more just, more beautiful, more peaceful world. So I arrived at McCormick Place at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. I took a taxi so that I could make my way there and not get lost in the parking lot. And my heart beat so fast as I saw people streaming into the convention center. Sikhs with their beautiful turbans, people from various Buddhist traditions, people from Eastern Orthodox, pagans in flowy gowns and pointed hats. Really, it was remarkable, simply remarkable. It caught my breath as I watched people coming in with the idea that we were there to learn, to grow, to share, and to have a call to action, a call to conscience, defending human dignity and human rights. It was beautiful. It was amazing. There were so many plenaries, there were so many sessions, and I was telling Ron, I'm so sad I didn't buy a book because I could have shown you, and I didn't buy it because I didn't want to carry it around. It was too thick, y'all. It was this thick. And I was like, oh, I'll get the app. And then last night, as I was pulling all the materials that I brought home, I thought, oh, I didn't bring a book, so I'm going to try and get one so that you all can see it and you can see some of the sessions. There were so many. There were some days 50 or more at the same time frame. Yes, I know, right? There were so many. And I'll tell you more about what some of the offerings were. But I was there to learn, to be fed, to come back more inspired and more committed to this work. The work of living into our prophetic possibility as a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and also our call to live with the world's religions to bring about the world that we seek. And it was about being fed. I don't know if you know, but our Sikh neighbors part of their service is to feed people. Every Gurdwara I've ever been to for an event, they feed us. And I was always amazed when I was in San Diego and I'd go to the Gurdwara and, you know, there'd be like maybe 100 people there and they'd be feeding us all. Wonderful vegetarian food. It was so good. With just this precision and joy and love. So imagine when I walk up the first day for lunch, there's a huge tent. Friends, they fed thousands of people from 11:30 to 2:30. The tent was open. You come in, you take your shoes off. If you didn't bring a head covering, they give you one. You walk in, and there's vats of food. And we're guided in, and for those who are able, which I was able to sit down on the floor, I did actually also manage to get up, which is why I'm here with you today. And we sit in rows, and they give you a plate, and then they come by and they put, wonderful dal and spicy vegetables and rice and naan and yogurty thing, which really cuts the really spice, and mango lassi and chai. And you sit there and, you know, I will tell you that my last day on Friday, I sat down, I was by myself, and I sat down to two women, and where are you from? That's the question that you ask. Where are you from? Because you know you're going to meet someone who may be from Europe, someone from Chicago, someone from across the country. And these folks were from Chicago. And they asked where I was from, and I said, well, I'm the Unitarian minister of at the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. And they go, you're UU, we're UUs. And so we were able to meet and greet, and that's the kind of experience that you have. I was just so grateful. And one of the things that you're on the ground when you can be, because no one's head should be higher than another. But there was no problem with people needing, to sit at a table because it was very accommodating. So that fed me, like literally fed my tummy, and it fed my soul, and it fed my spirit to see people from all over eating together and being fed this beautiful food. And then Fridays, I was there at the very end, and they were taking down these big things that they built, these big tables, and carrying large rugs. There were hundreds of them feeding thousands of us. And that kind of encapsulates the feeling that I got at the Parliament. There was a feeling of goodwill, of love, and of curiosity. There were workshops, as I said, and many, many sessions. I went to some that would feed my spirit. So I went to a Hindu session where I learned about a ritual called Agnihotra, which I had never heard of before. And then they sang the Hanuman Chalisa, which is one of my spiritual practices. It's a hymn to the monkey god Hanuman. And I was able to do it without the booklet. And people were very grateful that there was someone that could sing with them. But then there were other workshops. I went to a workshop on human rights from a variety of perspectives. A secular humanist professor, a Muslim woman, a dear friend of mine who's a Western Hindu Jain scholar and religious pluralism scholar, and another Jain scholar, talking about ethics and talking about rights and responsibilities from each perspective. Because remember, what we're doing here is learning from each other and learning how the world's religions can inform these things. I saw friends and colleagues. I got to fangirl over one of my most important teachers, Jean Shinoda Bolin. For those of you who are familiar with Jung, Jungian psychology, she's an author, and I've been deeply informed by her work and embarrassed myself by asking for a selfie. It was beautiful.
Did you get the selfie?
I did get the selfie, and then I got a full-on one. If we were inside, you'd be seeing some of my pictures. And my phone kept dying, so I didn't get as many pictures as I would have liked. But those of you who saw Yusuf Miller last week, he was there, and he takes pictures, so I'll make sure we get some of his. I'm going to talk about the plenaries in a minute, but other workshops that were so helpful. There was a workshop on like Gen Z and younger folks who are no longer going to church, and why, and what are people looking for. So there were people who, were able to share some of their insights. Gen Z, Gen X folks who were talking about what spirituality is to them. Because there's the world's religions that have practices, and there are people who consider themselves spiritual and may not have a set practice other than perhaps meditation or just even radiating love. There were so many, many different opportunities to see and to understand. There was an exhibit hall that was, honestly, that was the best exhibit hall I've ever seen. So many. The first booth, Ron, and everyone who's interested, when you walked in on the right side, was the Vivekananda Vedanta Society of Chicago. And Ron and I are in conversation. I met the Swami Ishtanananda and had a conversation with him, and we're looking to do a program with them in conjunction with the anniversary of our building dedication, the 134th. October 15th was founded dedicated in, Vivekananda spoke here not only once, but a couple of times. And the Swami was very happy to meet me, and we're looking forward to doing something with our neighbors and fostering that interreligious, interfaith connection where we really learn from each other. This is the thing about the Parliament that I want to share with you. There was an explicit recognition that we will disagree. The religions will disagree. This wasn't a call for we all need to believe the same thing. This is religiously and in our doctrines, because we know we will disagree. This was a call to conscience and for us to look at what unites us. In our diversity, there is a unity. And for me, what I felt, I've been to a lot of conventions. How many of you have been to a lot of conventions? Busy conventions, right? People are hustling around, running back and forth. You're waiting in line for food. And how many times have you noticed maybe somebody else being irritated because of lines or whatever? That maybe never happened to you. Nobody was irritated. There was just this feeling of love. And I stood in line for over 2 hours to register the first day. And there was glitches with the system. The next day it was easy. But there was a feeling of, okay, here we are. There was a feeling of goodwill. And it was beautiful to be immersed in that. And then booths of every faith, so many people from our friends from Unity, Centers for Spiritual Living, many sects of Buddhism, Islam, a gorgeous, painful, lovely exhibit of Black Lives Matter in response to Mr. George Floyd's murder, of quilts that were made from churches around New Hampshire. And they brought their quilt exhibit for us to see. There was a climate tent. It had all sorts of offerings. There was the Interfaith Vegan Association, where folks from all of the world's religions who have a call to live in harmony and peace with other animals, and they had numerous presentations. It was so hard to choose. At one point, I was just like, I'm going to just sit for a while. I want to tell you about an exhibit that I went to. It was the booth for the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative. And a woman that I met and actually had heard of and admired, she does Joanna Macy's work that reconnects. And I was glad to meet her. We were chatting and walking by the booth, and she pulled me in and said, you have to do this. She insisted that I do it, that I sit down, and had a 10-minute virtual experience of the Amazon. I had a feeling it would undo me, and it did. I was undone. It was as if the toucan was right here. It was as if I were in the forest. I was able to see above the forest. I was able to hear words and see an indigenous leader speak about the importance of their culture and of the animals and of this beautiful rainforest, the lungs of our planet, which is being destroyed. And I was indeed unable to speak for a while. And I went right in to an assembly by the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative, where indigenous leaders from the Amazon were there in person, y'all, in there, and virtually speaking about the importance of the rainforest to their culture, to the animals, and as I said, to the planet. There was a call for the initiative is Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. And there is a call for the ways in which all of us can support this initiative. And we support it in a number of ways. Now, you know what's happening in the Amazon, right? The forest is being clear-cutted for logging and for cattle and grazing. So one of the things that we were told that we can do is look at our consumption of food. We can advocate that our government work with and advocate and call other governments into a more just and a more sustainable relationship with the Amazon. Now we know that there are other forests around the world that are important as well. So that's a sample for me of what was one of the most touching things. Although I was pretty much touched the whole time. The the plenary sessions, they're called assemblies. And those were where, in the main hall, where, mostly nothing else was going on at that time, or very, very little. There was the Global Ethic Assembly. It celebrated the 30th anniversary of the development of the one that we just read. There were climate assemblies. The opening climate assembly offered views and perspectives from people from around the world, and really was a strong call to action. The crisis assembly highlighted the urgent threat of authoritarianism and addressed some of the most pressing threats facing democracy and human rights today. And this is from people all around the world. And there were some people who really brought it. Marianne Williamson brought it. I'm going to look for her speech. She was talking to the religious leaders, and she said, I know some of you will not want to talk about climate change because it might make people uncomfortable. And some of you might not want to talk about the effect of vulture capitalism because it might offend some donors. Some of you may not want to talk about things that make people uncomfortable, but this is what we're called to do. So I came back empowered and emboldened and grateful for the free pulpit and the ways that we can uplift what needs to happen in order for this call to conscience to be heard. And there was a conscience assembly that talked about the moral compass, a community assembly plenary that talked about how we engage and share experiences and building community. And I can't go into all of them. There's obviously in this parliament an emphasis on the rights of women and defending women around the world. And of course, there were in each of the events, the big events, the opening ceremony, went to a beautiful sacred music concert. There was gospel, there was Buddhist chanting, there was a beautiful Sufi dancer who twirled. I mean, it just brought in the richness of this world. And I have to tell you, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about the religions. And this gave me an appreciation of the depth, and that I sometimes just have a surface understanding. So seeing people in their practice was beautiful. And then at the closing ceremony, of course, there was Reverend Jesse Jackson and other folks really inviting us to continue to live the call to conscience. I was telling Ron that the grandson of the organizer of the 1893 Parliament was there, inviting people to continue their involvement. So the question that we won't answer today, but that I invite us to, as we consider what is ours to do as a congregation. Who have we been? Who are we now? And who are we called to be? How will we engage and live with this global ethic as Unitarian Universalists? There's so many ways that we can do that. What does our theology ask us to do? Because we do have a theology. It's a theology. I think our theology is right, equips us to be able to do this work. Now, we don't all share the same beliefs, lest you think I don't know that. but we do have a shared theology. It is our theology of interdependence, interconnectedness, grounded in love. Grounded in love. There was, every person who spoke about the power of love. And I often need to say, not a sentimental, smarmy, romantic love, not that there's anything wrong with that, but a love that calls us beyond ourselves. A love that is a radical love, an inclusive love. A love that doesn't obliterate difference, but recognize the unity that we're all held in. And for me, it is the love that coaxed us into existence, and it's the love that has been urging, luring us all, always. You know when you feel it, when your heart opens to the plight of a person who's been hurt, or someone who is suffering, or when we hear about the tragedies around the world, whether natural or human-induced. That feeling, do you know that feeling that you get? It's a stirring, right? It's kind of, for me, it's like here, and it's also in my heart. Do you know that feeling when you feel the empathy, the connection with another? When we feel outrage, because love does not mean that we are not outraged. It is the very injustice that we respond to that comes out of our love. The thing that I was so appreciative of in this Parliament of the World's Religions is the correctives that people were making to the language, the binary language of man and woman. And it was Marianne Williamson who said, and people, and including our LGBTQAI plus folk. So we're all evolving. But I invite us into the depth of that love, however it manifests, and into practices that give us the opportunity to connect to it, to dial into it, and to say, to be honest. That's why I ask you to breathe with me. Because I know in the breath connects us to everything that ever was. As we breathe in oxygen molecules that have been at one time or another in the lungs of every breathing being. And the breath connects us to one another, here and all around, and the rest of nature. And the breath on the exhale makes us ancestors for those who will come. There's the beautiful meditation song. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. So it's a call to love, a call to conscience for human dignity and human rights. I believe that we are also called to that. Not only that, I believe that we can do it. And I believe that there is no other thing that is ours to do. Nurturing each other, nurturing ourselves, building community, expanding our hearts, and doing the work that love calls us to do. May it be so. I love you. Will you join me in our chalice extinguishing words? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth and the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These are good words. Hold on a minute. I want to ask us to repeat these words, okay? Because we say them every week, right? We know some of us don't know what they are by heart. This is very similar to the one that we used at my congregation for 18 and a half years, so I apologize for having to read it. But we just say it. Let's say it. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of this community, or the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. Because the flame is out, and the flame's been out. Because that's just the way that is. It lasted. When did it go out? Because I turned to it and it just went out. Ron, you blew it up. He is so good. So the light's out, just out. But Carol, don't we have a light? A little light. Want to make it shine? Let's do it. Please rise in body or spirit and sing together. This little light of mine.
I think everyone knows this. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Yes, you got it. You got it. That's it, y'all. Go in peace. Be makers of peace. Amen. Blessed be.
What's your name?